discuss what some of the latest developments are at the Wilderness Crossing site. Some of you may know this has been an ongoing situation we've been dealing with for many years now, and has made its way into the courts. And there's a briefing coming up this Friday, and we wanted to bring in some content area experts to talk to you a little bit about what we can expect and what we're attempting to do here to save this crucial part of America's history and to deal with the still very severe data center threat that is spreading across the Commonwealth of Virginia, and by the way, in other states as well too. So I'm going to give a few brief comments and then turn it over to those experts. So on behalf of the American Battlefield Trust and our partners, thank you again for joining us today as we discuss the March 27th hearing and our legal challenge to the Wilderness Crossing development in Orange County. The lawsuit that we're going to be talking about today was brought by the American Battlefield Trust, the Central Virginia Battlefield Trust, the Friends of the Wilderness Battlefield, and local landowners. This proposal, which would be the largest rezoning in Orange County history, would bring thousands of residential units, major industrial and commercial uses, and potentially unlimited data center development to more than 2,600 acres at the doorstep of the historic Wilderness Battlefield, which, as you all know, is a place of national significance and, quite candidly, a key driver of heritage tourism in Virginia. Despite very strong public opposition, the project was approved without fully addressing its impacts on the surrounding community and historic landscape. It sits within the battlefield's historic study area and adjacent to protected lands, with serious implications for traffic, for infrastructure, and for the visitor experience, that power of place that we always talk about here at the American Battlefield Trust. Our case, though, as important as the history is about transparency and accountability. We believe the county failed to follow required legal processes, including adequate impact analysis on their development, proper public engagement, and consistency with its own comprehensive plan. A coalition of preservation groups and local residents has brought this challenge, and several key claims are now moving forward to trial. On March 27th, we will have a hearing that will continue the process toward our full trial. The legal challenge has been bolstered by the support of our great friends at the Piedmont Environmental Council, represented here today, the National Park Conservation Association, the Coalition to Protect America's National Parks, and the National Trust for Historic Preservation, who have filed amicus briefs. Ultimately, though, this is about more than just this one project. It's about protecting historic landscapes, ensuring lawful decision-making, and setting a responsible path for growth in Virginia. Today, you'll hear from Tom Van Winkle, president of the Central Virginia Battlefields Trust, Chris Miller, president of the Piedmont Environmental Council, and Mike Brady, our attorney representing us. And those gentlemen will provide additional context and outline what to expect at the upcoming hearing. We're also here to answer your questions about the lawsuit to this point and about the upcoming hearing. So please, if you would, use the Q&A feature available through the webinar, and our team working behind the scenes will work to make sure we can answer as many of those as we possibly can in the time we have today. So with that, I'm going to bring on our first content expert, and that is Tom Van Winkle, president of the Central Virginia Battlefield Trust. And folks, I cannot recommend to you strongly enough the great work that the Central Virginia Battlefields Trust has done for decades in that particular area of the Commonwealth. They have been just a fantastic local partner. We work hand in glove with CVBT and look forward to continuing to work hand in glove with CBT for many, many, many years to come. So I'm going to ask Tom to come on and provide a little additional context on why this hearing matters for battlefield preservation. So, Tom, if you would.
Hey, thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. I was going to little bit of background to understand exactly why this is such a critical portion of Central Virginia. Now, Central Virginia, the Civil War battlefield preservation requires actually a careful balance between honoring history and accommodating modern development. As our battlefields here in Orange and Spotsylvania counties face immense pressure from expanding data centers, new subdivisions, large distribution centers, and traffic congestion, it's essential to safeguard these historic sites for future generations. Now, between the years of 1862 and 1864, two great armies clashed here in the Rappahannock River region. Their battlegrounds have ever entered the nation's memory as Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, Mine Run, the Wilderness, and Spotsylvania Courthouse. Within an 18-month span, nearly 200,000 combatants converged on this small area, leaving over 100,000 casualties and a devastated landscape. Thoughtful planning and collaboration among preservationists, developers, and local communities can help ensure that the stories and the landscapes of the past are not lost amid the demands of progress. The preservation of Civil War battlefields is an important undertaking that recognizes the contributions of those who participated in the conflict, protects educational resources, maintains open spaces, and benefits the local economies. By safeguarding these historic sites, organizations such as the Central Virginia Battlefield Trust, American Battlefield Trust, and Friends of Wilderness Battlefield uphold the legacy of individuals from both sides of the war, facilitate continued learning for future generations, and contribute to the preservation of America's distinctive heritage. This hearing challenges the need for unprecedented growth in an historically sensitive portion of Central Virginia, and it's growth that would forever alter the nature of the area as being the largest rezoning in Orange County history. Now, we cannot save, nor should we save, every parcel of land where the Civil War conflict occurred. But however, there are certain places infused with the history that shaped this country where mass development simply does not belong. The Wilderness was the beginning of what would become known as Union General Grant's Overland Campaign, and the Union's head-on battle in the East against Confederate General Robert E. Lee. The Battle of the Wilderness would begin a complete shift in Union tactics and facilitated the eventual end of the Civil War. While sustaining over 29,000 casualties, the Wilderness is certainly atop the list of places that mass development should be managed. The Battle of the Wilderness was also the actual turning point of the Civil War, and where combat would never again be the same. Allowing the proposed size and scope of this massive development would forever hamper the ability for those of us who strive to continue our task of preserving this part of our nation's critical history here in Virginia, threatening that fragile balance between the modern development and understanding our nation's past. Historical sites are fixed. Development is not. Development can be positioned and scaled to accommodate irreplaceable historic resources. Furthermore, in order to have those all-important conversations regarding preservation and development, transparency, accountability, and ensuring that proper legal processes are followed is imperative. A battlefield echoes with the voices of men who lost their lives on that land, voices that still speak to those of us who seek to hear them. And since many of the men who fought and died on these fields left no letters, personal effects, or even their names in some cases, the ground itself is all we have to remember them by. So the decisions made here will have reverberations for the future of battlefield preservation in Central Virginia. All parties here have an inherited duty to be good stewards of our nation's history, remembrance of those who gave their last full measure for what they believed, and to allow current and future generations to learn from this conflict and not repeat it. Thank you, and Dave, I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, Tom, and amen. I especially love the comment that historic sites are fixed. I can't say how many thousands of times over the years I have said that very same thing in a response to, um, well, you guys just need to understand, modern development is going to take over all these places. Well, we can't move where a battle happened. But hopefully we can have constructive conversation and talk about ways we can have what I like to call an and conversation, that we can have the development necessary for modern society and protect these very fragile and, quite candidly, irreplaceable historic resources. So thank you, Tom. Appreciate that. Next up, I'd like to bring in our next speaker, and that gentleman is Chris Miller. Chris is president of the Piedmont Environmental Council. Their purview, as you might expect from that name, is a little bit broader than just the history, but PEC, again, has been just an incredible ally in our fight to help save these crucial places all across the Commonwealth. And so, Chris, um, please talk to us about all that you and PEC are doing to help.
Well, thank you, David. First of all, thank you so much for your leadership. American Battlefield Trust has just been a beacon of hope.
Thank you.
we call ourselves peddlers of hope at PEC, and you're certainly part of the larger network, and your good works and your willingness to stand up for protecting the lands we've already protected, I think is so important. And so thank you to all of our partners, and the National Parks and Conservation Association isn't here today, but they've just published a very good report that kind of summarizes all the impacts on parkland and battlefields in Virginia from the growing impact of data centers. And that's the point of view I'd offer, is that we work in the northern and central part of the state on land use, land conservation. Our mission is to protect the lands and waters of the Virginia Piedmont while building stronger and more sustainable communities. And 50 years of work is being placed at risk by what is essentially unmanaged growth of data centers and then the energy and water infrastructure that they're going to require. So, we're all in this together. We have slightly different points of view, but what brought us together again at Wilderness Crossing, and I think we've worked together there for almost 30 years, was the fact that this large proposal, 2,600 acres, came not only with the direct impacts on that parcel of land, but the impacts on the surrounding community, and in fact, all up and down central Virginia. And the impacts are varied. They're direct impacts on land, and then also on the air and water and historic resources. First and foremost was the lack of transparency, and we filed some early FOIA requests at our local staff working in Orange County, and that helped open up the fact that things were not fully as they were being described, and the importance of transparency and the fact that the local government was holding information critical to the decision, is fundamental to our concerns. Down the road, the lack of consideration of specific impacts, the lack of a clear understanding where water would come from and how it would be provided, no discussion of the potential energy impacts. And, the potential here is actually astounding. On 2,000 acres, you could build 20 million square feet of data centers that require 5 or 6 gigawatts of power. Why is that important? Well, the transmission line that's being discussed in the neighborhood, Valley Link, doesn't even carry that much power. So we probably are looking at 2 or associated generation plants in Orange County or nearby in order to supply the energy that they would need. And none of that was considered by the Board of Supervisors. And then the third thing is just the impact on our neighbors, the communities, the other historic resources. The Route 3 corridor is one of the most important historic corridors in Virginia. We have helped protect not only the battlefields, but also the surrounding history. Germanna is a great piece. There's some wonderful Black and African American resources and things that have been, treasured landscapes that are being protected one by one. All of these are being placed at risk, and we are fully on board to try to respond to those challenges and work with you to get to a better settlement. Thank you.
Okay, excellent, Chris. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for all that you and your team is doing. Um, I get a lot of credit for things that I don't do. I appreciate your kind comments, Chris. But as you well know, we've got just a fantastic team here at the American Battlefield Trust, as you do there, and as Tom does at CVBT, and our friends also at the Friends of the Wilderness Battlefield. Just a lot of very smart, dedicated, hardworking people who are trying to do the right thing at every step of this process. And so I just want to fully recognize that it ain't just you, it ain't just me, it's not Tom. We're just the eye candy here. You know, it's a lot of very, very hardworking people, and the citizens who are going to be impacted by these decisions as well, who have done a lot of hard work over the last couple of years. So speaking of hard work and maybe even eye candy, I'd like to bring in Mike Brady, who is our lead attorney on this issue for us. Mike is a partner at Whiteford Law, and he's going to tell us a little bit about what we can, give us an update on what we can expect on the Friday hearing. If you would, Mike.
Thank you, President Duncan. And I won't touch the eye candy piece, but I will echo the comments made about the Central Virginia Battlefield Trust, Friends of the Wilderness Battlefield, and other citizens in the area who really have been central to the challenge that has been brought. It was brought in May of 2023, if you all recall, to the decision that rezoned about 2,600 acres in Orange County, Eastern Orange County, in April of 2023. And so where the process is now is the question perhaps for many of you, and what can we expect from the upcoming hearing this Friday, March 27th. Where the process is most significantly, an order was entered on December 1st of 2025, so now a few months ago, but relative to the whole case, relatively recently, in which the court declined to dismiss 4 separate theories under which we had challenged the rezoning as unlawful, and they can get to those details as people are interested. They've all been in the papers and discussed quite a bit, but those four different challenges were ultimately upheld by the court as being legally valid challenges, and the efforts to dismiss them both by Orange County as well as by the developers of the land there in the wilderness were rejected. So the other side was presented with a question, well, where do we go from here? And it was unclear as to what they wanted to do. But one of the things they chose to do right around that time was to seek certification, is what it's called, of an interlocutory appeal. All of that sounds very complicated. It just means we'd like an appeal sooner rather than later to get to another court, in this case, the Court of Appeals of Virginia, to decide some of these same legal issues. That effort was made in a sort of informal way back in as early as November, before the order was entered. The court, Judge Franzine presiding in Orange County Circuit Court, declined to issue a ruling one way or the other on that issue, or to namely grant the motion that had earlier been made to certify the case up for appeal. Now, undeterred, the developers in Orange County has filed an amended motion for certification, and that was set for hearing this coming Friday. And we'll hear in that hearing a little bit about the orders that were entered before. And the argument isn't so much that they were wrong, though you may hear some of that, that basically that they were decided in a way that might give rise to substantial disagreement, that there might be a significant authority that points the other way, will be the contention of the developers and the county in this case, that there's some benefit to the parties in moving this thing along to an appellate proceeding rather than continuing in the trial court in the direction of a trial, which has still not yet been scheduled. Oh, and that somehow the resolution of some of the issues that have been identified will basically end the case, or at least largely advance it. So those are the types of arguments you're going to hear about. You may also hear something about scheduling and some of the other logistics, and that may come up. The hearing itself will be at 1:30 p.m. in Orange County Circuit Court, again before Judge Franzine, and we'll really again focus on, should the court continue to hear this matter and process it forward toward what would eventually be a final judgment where people can normally appeal at the end of the proceeding once they've had their day in court, or should it kind of cut short the time in the circuit court, at least with respect to some of the arguments, and send them up to the Court of Appeals, which will then get to decide does it want to intervene now, before the end of the case, and issue a determination of some of these legal issues? And those legal issues, as was alluded to here, involve significant aspects of compliance with Virginia code, with Orange County ordinances, with even Virginia Constitution provisions about notice, public engagement, and really fairness to the members of Orange County and the people who pay taxes even in Orange County. So all of those issues are being presented, were presented, and continue to be live before the circuit court. The question is, are they going to stay in front of the circuit court in full, or might they go to the Court of Appeals for further action? So happy to answer questions that folks have. Otherwise, I'll send it back to Jared.
Hang on. Okay, great. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. So, yeah, I think at this point in the presentation, Jared Hare, our staff member, is going to be fielding some questions for you. So if you do have a question for any of the folks who've spoken with you here this afternoon, please do let us know. So Jared?
Yeah, thank you, David. And as David mentioned at the start of the presentation, there's a Q&A button down at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We've already gotten some questions coming in, and I know that some of those questions were actually touched upon earlier in the presentation. But if you have something that you'd like to hear from one of the panelists, please let us know. We'll kick things off. Also joining us today is Beth Stenstrom, who's on the board of directors for the Friends of Wilderness Battlefield. Beth, thanks so much for being here. She's to kick us off with our first question. So Beth, I'm wondering if you could talk a bit about what the battlefield means to the community and how it's still a resource today.
Thank you for letting me join you today. I appreciate that. Okay, Battle of the Wilderness was a really major battle, as everybody knows. Think about it. Many of our ancestors fought there. They died there. Many were wounded there. Some of them may still be under the ground and we don't know it. We need to respect those ancestors. We need to tell their stories. Another component to me that's really important, aside from just having that natural green space and beauty, is education. How do we teach the future generations? How do we teach people what happened there? It's one thing to tell the story, but when you walk the grounds and you see the entrenchments and you see the landscape and you actually walk it and you go up and down those ridges, it makes it a lot more real. And that really helps a lot for people to better understand it. Okay, back to you, Jared.
Thank you very much, Beth. I appreciate that. Mike, you're a very popular guy today. So we've got a couple questions for you here. I'd like to kick things off. Can the Orange County Board of Supervisors and the county attempt for a second time to have this case thrown out?
So that's a great question. The first effort, as you all may have heard or recall, is what they call a motion to dismiss. And that was resolved, and the question then becomes, what do we do from here? Well, what do we do from here is ordinarily we go to a trial. And at a trial, your case is either proven or it's disproven, right? Or arguments can again be made. Well, given what you've proven, it doesn't entitle you to any kind of legal relief. And so we're going to continue to hear arguments like that, I suspect, even if this case goes on to trial and doesn't get resolved sort of by some sort of resolution that's through agreement of some sort between the parties. But no, that as a general matter, we're going to be headed towards trial is what you would expect. You'd expect to get a trial date. And then for the question to become, what do the facts show? What does the evidence show? And does it support our claims that we've made? And ultimately, do they prevail or not? That would get you then to a final judgment and then an appeal. As many folks know, perhaps we've been on some of these prior calls, so many of these cases are decided kind of on the papers, in the sense that what's in the legislative record, what was done before the court, before the Board of Supervisors, what's already been filed in the court, no one really disputes the facts in so many cases, right? There may be a few that are disputed here that we'll have to ultimately resolve. But for a lot of the theories in which we've challenged the rezoning, the facts that underlie it are fairly in the documents that were supported, that were permitted to be considered at the demur stage, at the motion to dismiss stage, and by ultimately the Board of Supervisors. So it should not be the case that all of them require a lot of factual development, but we would expect to hear more about facts and then what does the law require in light of them, not additional motions to dismiss.
Thanks very much. Mike, I'll ask you, and then I'll invite some of our other panelists also to touch on this. Would there be any benefit to having a civilian presence at the hearing on Friday? And then after you answer, I'll turn it over to the other panelists to talk a bit about some other ways that people can voice their opposition to this project.
Certainly, it never hurts for people to know, including judges, to know that people care about this case. I'm pleased to report that Judge Franzine has been very attentive to this proceeding. He's received numerous briefs on the issues. He's afforded the parties a significant amount of time to argue each of the motions. He's moved in a very circumspect and careful way through them. And we think that has been beneficial, frankly, to the challengers who have put forward what we believe is a very strong case, but one that it takes a little bit of effort to understand, right? It's not something that judges see every day. And Judge Franzine has been very attentive to the arguments being made, the facts that have been alleged and pled, and ultimately the decisions that are presented to him for the case. So it's open to the public. The public is certainly welcome to join. We've had folks join in the past, and I think Judge Franzine appreciates that this matters to Orange County. If you'd like to come, please do. If you'd like to meet me in person or talk to other members of the team, we'll be there. Feel free to do that.
Thank you, Mike. Tom, I see you've popped back on camera.
Yeah.
How can people wanting to voice opposition or get involved be of help?
I think it's definitely productive that the public understand what's going on here, because ultimately our organizations are not preserving this land for ourselves. We're preserving this for American people, for the public themselves. This is all for everyone's benefit. So the more education the public would have on the challenges we have and what's going on here, it's essentially here in Central Virginia, is much appreciated and much wanted. So yeah, I would say if they would like to show up, or they would like to learn more about this, they should.
Thanks very much, Tom. Chris, a question coming in for you. Could you talk a bit about the impact on Wilderness Crossing, what that would have on the electricity needs of Orange County?
Well, it's potentially enormous. The scale of this is hard to wrap your head around, but let's say 1,000 acres out of the 2,600 acres is developed as data centers. That's probably enough to generate demand of 3, even as much as 4 gigawatts of electricity, and that's bigger by a multiple of 3 than North Anna Nuclear Power Plant, which is not far away in Louisiana County.
Wow.
So the only way to get that much power into Orange County is either a whole lot of natural gas power plants or several large transmission lines like the Valley Link line, 165-foot towers, 200-foot right of way going through people's land. And that's a big issue, and it's very much directly related to this decision.
Thank you very much, Chris. Mike, coming back to you, will you be pushing for this case to stay in circuit court or to jump to the Court of Appeals?
Well, thank you for the question. And the position that the challengers have taken is that it belongs before Judge Franzine until we get to a final judgment. It is rare, as I think another commenter noted, that a motion for certification would be granted from an order denying the motion to dismiss. That just means the case gets to go forward. And in our case, it means a little bit more than that, because the question really is, in so many of these cases, as I've indicated, whether your theory, whether the facts you pled, which are largely uncontested, give rise to a claim that the rezoning was illegal or improper in some fashion. And so the court saying what you've pled is adequate for that purpose is a really important decision, but it's not one that usually goes right on to an appellate court. And for that reason, we think it's appropriate to get to a judgment first and then go on to the Court of Appeals if the parties are so advised to do that. So we have not sought a certification here. At the same time, we're not afraid of certification. If the court were to grant it, then we'll continue to make our arguments in the Court of Appeals, and we believe be successful there as well. Because the arguments that we've advanced here, unlike in so many of the certification cases, cases that do end up on appeal in that kind of posture, are based on very clear, in our estimation, very clear Supreme Court precedent, some Court of Appeals precedent, and some statutes that have to be applied, have to be given force and effect, and have been given force and effect by the courts in the way that we've urged them to be right here in this case. So we just don't believe that this is a very good candidate for certification. And to this point, there's been no indication that Judge Franzine will certify, but we're prepared to argue that he should not. And should he certify it, we're prepared to oppose it in the Court of Appeals, and if need be, argue it on the merits in that court. But no, we have not proposed to join in with this request for certification. In some cases, that does happen. All parties agree it's a very uncertain question, and we need the courts of appeals to tell us how to resolve it. We don't contend that that's the case here. We believe that settled law resolves it in our favor.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. David, a question for you. The American Battlefield Trust, obviously we are deeply concerned about battlefields across the country. What makes the wilderness so special, and why have we engaged so much to stop this mega development?
Great question. A couple of answers. Obviously, as Tom touched on, and Beth did to a certain extent as well, too, obviously the history. This was the first place in America where U.S. Grant squared off against Robert E. Lee during May of 1864. And that began a train of events that led directly to Appomattox. And so, we step back, of course, and look at the larger aspect of the impact of American history on the country that we have today. And that's why we're in this business. And that's why this organization has now saved something north of 61,500 acres. Folks, that's closing in on 64,000 acres, which expressed another way is 100 square miles of preserved hallowed ground. And to the extent that we believe that, again, I think it was Beth who mentioned, while many of those soldiers who fought and fell on these fields were later removed to other cemeteries, there's no way they got everybody. And so these places are still truly hallowed ground. They are American military cemeteries in that respect. So just from the historic standpoint, worthy of our best efforts, and I think the word was also mentioned, which I heartily agree with, our duty to protect and steward these places, improving them wherever we can in the limited time that we have upon this earth, stewarding them to the best of our ability, and then passing them along whole and intact to the next generation. You can move development, you can move data centers, you can mitigate heights and distances and things like that. We can't move where this country's history happened. So this is also not the first time we've had to fight back a very serious development threat in very nearly the same area. Long-term members will recall that very close to this area, we had to fight many years ago Walmart, who wanted to build a supercenter here and at the Wilderness. And of course, when you build a Walmart supercenter, that's not an isolated development. It attracts much, much more development. And so we realized back then we had to do the same thing. We had to get into a fight over a local land use decision. And it's kind of ironic that at that point, eventually, Walmart backed down and picked a site that we had originally suggested to them before we all went to litigation and caused ourselves all this aggravation. If they had just listened to us at the beginning, we could have saved a lot of time, energy, effort, and money. And so the hope is that we could have something similar happen here today with this development as well. Let's work together for the best possible outcome for all of these entities, the residents of Orange County, of course, and the people who are going to come over the coming generations because they want to visit this historic place.
Thank you, David. And I know that there's a couple of people asking about some other ways to get involved, some resources on the Trust website. I just put in the chat a link to our Speak Out advocacy page. There's on there a petition for folks to urge the county officials to reconsider this rezoning. So I really appreciate that answer, David. You spoke about our fight against Walmart. I'm wondering if you could just briefly touch upon a couple of the other lawsuits that we've taken on as an organization, and kind of talk about our need to fight.
Yeah, probably the biggest, and certainly the other one that's running concurrently is, again, a data center development at Manassas. And I know there are other trust members on the call here who've heard me say this before, so I don't want to be too repetitive. But on the western edge of the Manassas battlefield in Prince William County, we had the same thing happen several years ago. A county rushed through a rezoning, and we believe they did it illegally and did not follow the necessary and proper procedures. And that rezoning would have allowed for the largest data center development, not just in the Commonwealth of Virginia and not just in the United States of America, but the largest data center development on planet Earth. So think about everything that you've heard here today from Chris talking about electricity usage to water. I don't think we've even touched on the noise that these types of massive developments inflict on local residents. And as a personal editorial comment, the Wilderness Crossing development, I'm just dumbfounded that they would allow for data centers that close to such a densely proposed residential development. I mean, who wants to live next to these things that are, enormously tall, have banks of air conditioners that run 24 hours a day, probably have lights that burn pretty brightly at night as well too. But so it's apologies to Mike and any other attorneys who might be on the call, but I'd much rather spend our members' donations on preserving unprotected battlefield land and doing history education, not paying attorneys. But we have to. We have to make sure that everybody is playing by the same rules. And so, yeah, it's an expense. I am grateful to our members who have helped finance our legal challenges at both of these entities so far. And I'm grateful for the way things seem to be trending.
Thank you, David. And we are starting to come up on time. So again, I just implore folks, if you have any questions that you would like to ask any of our panelists, please put those in the Q&A section, and we'll try to get to those in the few minutes we have left here. Mike, one more question for you. And excuse me, my computer's frozen up, so hopefully you can still see me.
You look good, Jared.
Okay, good. I'm sorry. Here, one second. Mike, I guess really quickly, if you could touch upon, do we know who the lawyers are that are representing the county, and what their thoughts are on going into the hearing? I know you don't want to speculate too much, but
that's fair. I don't want to try to get into their heads and tell you what they're thinking. I have to say that there has been good engagement with the other side. Orange County is represented by its county attorney, though that has changed over the years. And those who have followed this case probably are aware that there was earlier another county attorney, then an outside law firm was in place for much of the case until recently. and then a different county attorney took over, and her name is Amy Wilson. She's in the process of moving to Culpeper County as their county attorney, but I understand that she continues to represent Orange County. The developer interests here are represented by Herschler Fleischer, as they were a law firm here in Richmond, as they were back at the time of the development. So a little bit different attorneys themselves, but same law firm, and we've been dealing with them throughout the course of this case. And I expect we'll see them at the hearing on Friday. There was a question about what about this notice of appeal that was filed, and if you all read our papers, and they are publicly available, we can certainly make them available to folks who are interested. You'll see that there was reference to an effort made by the developer and the county to file what is called a notice of appeal to the Court of Appeals, and that has certain implications for the court's jurisdiction to proceed in the circuit court until that issue is resolved. So you will hear about on Friday arguments about whether the court can actually act on this motion for certification or any other motion while this notice of appeal is pending in the Court of Appeals of Virginia. So that will come back up. That's very much inside baseball and super nerdy lawyer stuff, but it will get argued, I expect, on Friday, and so wanted to touch on that as well.
Appreciate it, Mike. Thank you. All right, we're coming up on time, so I would like to just invite Chris, Tom, and Beth, if any of you have any final thoughts, and David, if you want to leave us with one last nugget of wisdom as we head into the preparing for this hearing on Friday, that'll wrap up our conversation today.
Yeah, Chris, why don't you go, and then Tom and Beth, and then I'll take us home.
Well, what I would say is there's never been a time in our history where citizen participation wasn't so important. I mean, this is a time when a lot of things are being done behind closed doors in secret, on accelerated schedules without following the rules. And all the questions in the chat about what can we do is a sign of what we're seeing all across Virginia, all across the Piedmont, which is people want to weigh in, they want to participate. They want to make sure that we protect the important places and we develop things in a reasonable and responsible way. Thank you for all you're doing. There's lots to work on. There's a hearing on the Valley Link transmission line. I think 500 people showed up at the briefing on that because of the concern, and I'm very encouraged by that. I think Virginians in particular understand the importance of our historic resources, but they also care deeply about the places that they live. And I think that combination will get us to the right answer, and encourage you to keep participating locally and at the state level. Reach out and ask. We can give you lots of opportunities. Thanks.
Okay. Tom?
Yeah, I would echo what Chris said. These situations, as I stated, we need to be proactive and not reactive. The only way we can be proactive is we have those conversations with development and preservationists before we get to the point we're at now. And if we have those conversations and the public is well informed, as David said, we would rather put our money into the dirt and grass than again, no offense, Mike, the pockets of attorneys. So we need to strive to have better communication before these things get to this point.
Thank you, Tom. And Mike, please don't take it badly. I mean, when we need you, we come running, and we're grateful to you and your team for all that you're doing to help us. Truly are. And if we were counting on me to handle all this, we wouldn't be getting very far. So I'm very grateful to you for what you are doing to help us. So I appreciate your expertise. Yeah, I've just been thinking a lot, obviously, about America's history and the importance of America's history because of the 250th coming up this July. And we've been thinking internally about the 250th for 5 years around here. And most people, they're just having a dawning awareness at the moment that our country's 250th birthday is coming up in July. And I thought back to even some things like when I was a kid, and I'm giving my age away here, but when my dad woke me up to come see Neil Armstrong jump down the ladder onto the moon. His message to me was, this is historic. This is important. You need to see this. And it's not just that we're saving history or these hallowed grounds for history buffs or Civil War buffs to come around and enjoy. Again, these places are, I believe, important to our country. And ultimately, my organization and the other organizations represented here today, we're saving these places to inspire appreciation for our country, for its history, and for the freedoms that were secured for every single one of us at these places. And this is real. It's not just a hobby. This is important to the future of our country. And again, if we can have that seat at the table initially that Tom talked about, and we can express how important and irreplaceable these places are, how they cannot be moved, that's mostly what we're asking for. And we might still lose, but by God, we're going to fight and we're going to make our point for sure. So I just wanted to leave you with that thought that as we approach our country's 250th, let's secure these places so that 250 years from now, those people are looking back at what we have done and they say, my gosh, I'm sure glad those people were there. I'm glad they fought to preserve these places. God only knows what they'll look like in 250 years, but I can guarantee you they will be glad that we are in this fight. So thank you. Everyone.
Thank you, David.
Jared, turn it back over to you.
Yes, yeah, and well, Mike, I just want to maybe direct your final comments. First, if you could again remind people when and where the hearing is going to be on Friday, and then maybe talk about what could come from that. You know, after where should we be looking after Friday?
Sure, happy to. And so the hearing is, again, everyone is who might want to attend is in Orange County Circuit Court. It's a fairly large courtroom, but if everyone in the chat shows up, it'll be very full. It's at 1:30 p.m. on Friday, March 27th. So this Friday in Orange County Circuit Court. If you intend to be there, I would encourage you to show up a few minutes early, so as not to delay proceedings or distract folks. And the court is very welcoming, but there's only one door to get through, so it takes a little time if there's going to be a lot of folks. And I would say, well, if you can expect it to go for about an hour, right? So the hearing will last from between 1:30 and about 2:30, perhaps as long as 3. Again, Judge Franzine has been very indulgent with counsel if the folks wanted to talk about additional things. But I would expect it would be over by about 3 p.m. this Friday, March 27th, and that's in Orange, Virginia, in the Orange County Circuit Court building. And there's a good amount of parking there as well. So if you show up, you can find a place to park. And I hope you do. Hope you come up and engage. And really from there, it depends on what the court does. I expect the court will indicate from the bench what the ruling will be on the motion. So we'll know. It won't be entered as an order in a formal sense, but we'll know what the court intends to do. If the court were to grant the motion, the next step would be for things to proceed in the Court of Appeals for a time. If the court were to deny it, I expect that the following steps would be oriented towards advancing the schedule for the trial process. So when is a trial going to be set? What needs to be done between here and there to get to a final judgment when an appeal, if needed, could be had? And certainly in the meantime, parties can engage and discuss, and influence can be brought to bear on our political leaders and those, particularly those in Orange County, to have their voices be heard and represent the interests of their constituents as to what ought to be done with that portion of Orange County.
Thank you very much, Mike. And I know we're running out of time. If we did not get a chance to answer the question, I put my email in the chat for everybody. It is also on the American Battlefield Trust news webpage. Especially if you're a member of the media, if there's something that we can do to help clarify things, help you tell the story, please let us know. And thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time. A video recording of this briefing will be available. If you know somebody that missed it and may be looking for it, please reach out to me and I'll make sure to get it in the right place. So thank you very much, and we'll look forward to having hopefully good news to report on Friday.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Recordings.